Hey, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Good Marketing with Stephanie. I'm your host, Stephanie Pryor. Today, we have a great guest with us. His name is Patrick Schober, and he's the founder, owner, and creative director of Poetica Marketing. I actually met Pat back when I was in college. The first 2 years of my collegiate career, I spent at Seton Hill University out in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, and I met Pat while I was there before I transferred to Shippensburg, which is where I graduated from. Just a little fun fact about me. But I've stayed in touch with Pat over the years as he's built his firm, and way back when I even helped him with his logo. We've had a great relationship over the years. Super excited to have him here. And Poetica Marketing is a branding, marketing, and events company based out of Pittsburgh. They help their clients stand out online and in person through bespoke strategies that generate measurable results. And we all love measurable results, don't we, guys? Today, we're going to talk about a topic that, people maybe are going to scoff at a little bit, but we are going to talk about AI. I'm sorry, guys, we have to talk about it. AI is not going anywhere as we head into 2026. So we're going to talk about how we really can use AI to our best advantage as marketers, how it can really help us make some of our business operations more efficient, whether that is on the marketing side, if you're an in-house marketer, if you're an agency owner or a freelancer, solopreneur, how it can help you even with the sales side of things. So we're going to talk about how to balance that with the human side of marketing, right? There's a lot of hype out there around AI. And so today, Pat and I we're going to talk about this balance, how to find that, and what to expect going into 2026 with your marketing strategy. Welcome to the show, Pat.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be here.
Of course, we're super happy to have you. So yeah, I would love for you to just tell our listeners a little bit more about you, about your background, and what you want to talk about today.
Yeah, so I'm Pat. I'm the founder, CEO, creative director, whatever. I'm not big on titles at Poetica Marketing. We're a branding, marketing, and events agency based out of Pittsburgh. And I started my career as a B2B journalist out in the Philadelphia area. And it ended up being great for my career trajectory because I had never taken a marketing course. I'd never taken a business class in college. So this was a great way to get like a theoretical foundation of business knowledge and like business acumen under my belt. And then, so I did that for about 3.5 years. And then I was at an agency downtown in Pittsburgh for about 1.5 years. That ended up being a wild roller coaster experience. It was very poorly run. We had about 4 CEOs in that like 1.5 years, a lot of turnover. And then somebody bought out the company, let go of half the team. I was on the losing end of that. And I realized I couldn't go and work for somebody else yet. I was just like damaged goods. And so that was my opportunity to start Poetica and apply all of the stuff I knew about content marketing, everything I knew about writing, and all of that stuff I learned about business in Poetica. So we've been doing this for 7 years now, since 2018. We've grown slowly but surely. My wife is part of the team now. She's our events specialist. We have a full-time graphic designer now who's a great part of the team. And so we're looking forward to the year ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I just have to say, and I love having fellow agency owners on the show because I can so relate to your story of how you ended up founding Poetica. Very similar situation for me. So if anybody's listening to this and you're like, yeah, I decided to try to make it on my own because I just could not go to work for somebody else again. You are not alone in that feeling. So, I also think that, your background and how Poetica has evolved over the years, because, we've been working together in some capacity with Poetica for a long time, right? I helped you with your logo way back when. That was fun. The way that things have evolved shows obviously that you're like very adaptable and, you're able to go with the flow and then to make changes and then change your services to meet your clients' needs based on, whatever's going on. And I think that really is a nice segue into our conversation, which, I'm sorry, guys, but I'm not sorry. We're going to talk about AI. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, please, like no more AI conversations, but unfortunately it is not going anywhere. We need to have these conversations. And Pat, I think you have a very good perspective on how AI fits into marketing. And I think you could probably give our audience a good idea of how they could use AI going into 2026, but also bringing some good news, right? Which is that AI is not necessarily fundamentally changing marketing, but that it's still, you still have to focus on the human aspect of this, right? So how do you balance those things? So, I'll hand it over to you with that. What do you think is going to be the biggest trend in marketing in 2026 in terms of AI and how that fits into the whole picture?
Yeah, so I'll start by throwing you a curveball, because I was thinking about this earlier today, and I had some thoughts that we didn't talk about pre-show on a few things. But I think AI has the potential to augment our capabilities and make our outcomes more meaningful while enhancing sort of the human aspect of what we do. So I think the technology itself it's scary, right? Especially for like agencies and people in marketing or creatives in general, because it does a lot of things we do, and it can do a lot of it very well, as long as it's prompted correctly. But I think that we can look at platforms like Meta for some really interesting case studies. So like right now, the Meta platform has this like AI functionality built into its ads manager, and the early results show that the AI campaigns are often 10% better than human created ad campaigns. So these are like the best humans that we have, and the AI is outproducing them, right? And then you also have these like you basically have Meta chatbots that can install into your website and learn everything about your company through your social posts and through your website. And then that can act as an agent on your behalf on your website. So when you send people to your website through an ad, it can then help convert them into a paying customer, which is crazy. So you have more of this like end-to-end sort of like AI assistance. And we'll see what happens if that ends up playing out well. But I think that is an exciting opportunity for point number 2, which is a colleague of mine out here in Pittsburgh, Dan Simpkins. He runs an agency called DX Performance, but he's also a co-founder of an AI consulting company called ATEED. And they recently did an article on how AI is actually going to make human work harder. And what their thesis was, there is a lot of time spent in sales, for example, that's just around grunt work, right? It's not even getting to the conversation with a prospect. It's researching that prospect, figuring out your best way in, and then executing upon that. And then, having those meaningful conversations and working them down the funnel. Well, AI is very good at identifying prospects, really looking at your data and helping you figure out where the biggest opportunities lie, then really helping set up those conversations so that you can go and execute. And we as humans have a tendency to kind of delay the hard work and really focus on the easy stuff, right? And so Dan's theory is that AI will help do all of that grunt work, which will then push us out into the field to actually focus on sales, right? So I think this goes back to this idea of human-to-human marketing. People, as a society, we're reluctant to accept AI, but it's here and it's here to stay. And I think the most important thing is, both from a sales perspective and a marketing perspective, people want to do business with people. It feels a little weird chatting with an AI bot still. And it feels weird when you're talking to an AI agent on the phone. But I think if we can find a happy medium between how we create content, how we connect with our audiences, and kind of pull them down the sales funnel, I think we can have really, really great results, not just in 2026, but well beyond that.
Yeah, those are some really great points that you make. And I definitely sense that, and in many ways experience that myself, right? Like I'm a person too, and change is scary in general. And I think that there is a lot of hype out there around AI that we hear, especially things like artificial general intelligence and things like that, where, it's very easy to make that leap from, okay, AI is a really useful tool in all those different ways you were just describing, right, in terms of advertising or sales. And there's so many different ways we can use those tools creatively now. But making that leap from it being a useful tool to this is just going to replace all of us, and what are we going to do? We're all going to be out of a job. And, to your point, I just don't think that that's true. And I think if we look back, right, at how technology has evolved, and I'm not making a new point here, right? Like, I've definitely seen this out there, but like even the internet, when it first started, like people kind of thought, it's going to be a fad or whatever, it's just going to pass by, but it didn't, right? It became a really integral part, for better or for worse, of all of our lives, and it actually did help us work a lot more efficiently. And so I imagine that AI is going to be similar. We just have to learn how to adapt. And you gave some great examples of how it can be useful in that way. And I really want to hone in too on the point you made about the human to human connection, right? So like, we know, for example, great, like AI is going to help us do better advertising. Well, good, because we want to connect with the right people, especially in an environment where there's a lot of fatigue around ads, right? From just seeing generally too many ads to maybe ads that aren't really relevant for you or are not really engaging, right? And AI can help us with that. Tell me a little bit more about how your agency is approaching that human element and creating that full funnel experience for your clients' customers.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to mention is, the flip side of AI advertising and AI marketing is when it goes wrong. And we have a Slack channel fully dedicated to just like making fun of like bad marketing. We have another one that's like praise for good marketing, but we also have one so that we can kind of comment on what's not going well. We had one in there yesterday that I dropped in that was probably AI generated. We're saying that mostly because of the font choice and also because of the spelling errors and like inconsistency in the caption and what was actually in the graphic. And I've like screenshotted some in the past where like an individual will have a third phantom arm, right? So like, and these things, I think there is an over-reliance in some instances to use AI and just push things out into the field and create what we call AI slop, right? And that doesn't really do anyone good. But if it can be used very thoughtfully, that's when you can start seeing results.
Yeah, and I have to say, on the AI slop side, I don't know about you, but pretty much every time I log on to LinkedIn, I see some shape or form of AI slop where it's like the same exact structure for the post every single time, or you see those comments that just are kind of like a word salad that don't really make any sense. So like I definitely see your point too. Like, again, it's not like a new thought, right? But just you can't just go to ChatGPT and write, hey, do this, and then have no human intervention like whatsoever. So like from a creative aspect, we're still pretty good there too.
Yeah, right.
For sure. So yeah, I mean, I would love to hear, a little bit more looking ahead to next year again, how you plan to incorporate both AI and, those more like human opportunities, right? Like opportunities to connect with actual people in your marketing and, with your clients.
Yeah. So long-winded answer here coming up. So I'll respond quickly by explaining some of the ways that we've incorporated AI into our workflow. Obviously, it's been really great from a content perspective, especially when it comes to research. I know that ChatGPT has a bad reputation for research, but if you prompt it to cite its sources, it can do a good job of that. So I will often get content, 90% of the way there, and then use it to fill in the blank, and then just verify its corrections are accurate or its inputs are accurate, and then we have something that is holistic. As long as it's copying the same tone and voice. Sometimes it needs a few edits. That's been very helpful. We're working on a project right now that has been a little bit of a test for a client, but it's sort of like an interactive infographic that we've been building in Figma. And now we're just kind of honing in on the code to make it a little bit easier to use. And so we're using chat for that right now, and hopefully that'll be done later today. So we're really bullish on it from a creative perspective. Really quick, going back to my college days. So I did my senior project on human communication in a digital society, so on the internet. So this is going back 2013, 2014, 10, 15 years ago, before we had rampant AI. And a lot of the stuff that I found in doing that was really about how the internet has sort of broken down human relationships and human connections in bad, negative ways. So you have people who are building relationships online, often in chat rooms or wherever, and they're not enjoying that sort of physical proximity. And from that, we lose a lot of the warmth and the touch that we all need as human beings to kind of nurture ourselves and nurture our well-being. And we saw this happen to an extreme during COVID, right? Where people were stuck in their houses. You had kids who were developmentally behind because they like weren't building those social skills, that ability to make eye contact, that ability to shake somebody's hand. We had a lot of different, nauseating thought pieces after a while about how children were being set back. And I think all of this is only going to get worse as we start using AI, because now AI is able to replace even the human that you would talk to in a chat room, right? You don't have to search very hard. Every now and then, like, an article comes up about somebody proposing to their AI chatbot that they built, or somebody who's been totally, there was even a movie about that, right? A few years ago, Her. So this isn't a foreign concept, and I can see it becoming more problematic in the future. So I just wanted to address that as kind of table setting. I think we saw post-COVID a very heavy reaction against being stuck in your house. People wanted to be out. They wanted to be connecting with other people. That really provided a boost to the events industry, at least on the local level. And I think that as we continue to see more AI online and the way we interact, I think there's also going to be more desire for live in-person events, live engagements, live interactions. And so I think for us, this is a great time for us to be in the events industry, because it's really, really hard to replicate one-to-one interactions in person as you do online. We do a lot in the like online events industry. We've run conferences online and they go great. But the problem is, when you're in an online conference like that, or you're watching a segment, or even if you're participating in a summit or webinar, you're really only engaged for that hour or those 45 minutes that you're on screen together. And there's no opportunity to go into the green room and like hang out, kind of, talk shop for a little bit, share a coffee. There's no opportunity to go grab, a donut or a muffin, or go get lunch afterwards, right? And there's no opportunity to kind of engage with any of the participants, right? And there are just certain things that you don't get online that you do get in person. And a lot of it is intangibles. A lot of it is that touch, those things that we need as people. And I think from a business perspective, that is a huge opportunity to build meaningful one-to-one connections, to collect email addresses, to collect phone numbers, and really pull people into your funnel. And starting from a point where you can have an emotional interaction with them and you can give them a really memorable experience, so that they get an emotional tie to your brand, to your marketing, and they'll be more receptive as consumers in the future.
Yeah, and it's a huge brand differentiator too, right? Like if you're creating these experiences and these opportunities for people actually to connect face to face with you, with the people that are behind your brand, right? Like that's only going to build brand equity for you. So there's all these different, forms of business justification for doing these things. And I would ask any listeners or viewers of this episode as well to think about it. If we're being truly honest with ourselves, when you're in a digital webinar or something like that, and you hear a speaker and you think this speaker is great, right? Well, you could go and connect with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I attended this event. I loved hearing you speak, yada, yada, yada. And you can kind of build a relationship that way. But when you're at an event, you can actually go up and talk to the speaker and say,
Right.
hey, I would love to your point, have a coffee with you or something like that. You'll probably notice, right? And if you're the person being asked in that situation, you're going to be much more open and receptive to, talking to that person or going the extra mile to help them out and working on that relationship when you have that real face-to-face connection, because that's how people work, right? And it's not that you can't form relationships online. It's just not quite the same as, when you actually get those real opportunities to interact with people. So I think, to your point, having that balance between this really smart, digital strategy with content that's really relevant, that resonates with those people, that's targeted, right? Being able to use AI also, right, to make it more efficient, and like strategically, like, more effective, but then also coupling that with these opportunities for real authentic connection and relationship building. I think you're kind of playing a multi-dimensional game here within marketing. And I think truly that's something that, sets you and would set your clients' brands apart. Right. So that's kind of my takeaway from that, and would love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I do think that I think people who are going to be successful in the future are going to be sort of multi-channel marketers. And you can kind of see this playing out today, where somebody will build their entire business on like TikTok, right? And then suddenly there's threats about taking TikTok out of the United States. That is threatening your entire business model, right? When Cloudflare went down the other day, that disrupted a huge portion of the internet. Like, you couldn't get onto Canva, you couldn't get onto X. That's not good, right? And you think about the spillover then if I'm an agency and I can't get into Canva and I can't build these things, just there's ripple effects to all of this. And so that's why it's so important, one, to be multi-channel, but two, to own the relationships that you have with your clientele. And this is important for all business owners, right? Like, you can't put all of your eggs in the Facebook basket. You can't put all of your eggs in YouTube. You can't put all of your eggs into Facebook ads or billboards, because if something burns down, metaphorically or literally in the case of billboards, you don't want your entire business model to go kaput. And so I think being able to take that holistic view in an overall campaign and get that message out across multiple channels where your target audience is already is what's going to make people successful, because the competition now is greater than ever before. There's a lot of like AI slop out there. There's just a lot more noise than ever before, but there's still competition. And so the question is, how do you remain relevant, and how do you stand out in a very crowded market?
Yeah, absolutely. And, going back to the AI slot piece of it, but also being able to use AI, for optimization and things like that. I would venture far enough to say that if you're in a situation where, you're seeing a business owner or something that says, you know what, AI will do everything for us, right? Like, AI, we don't even need people anymore. We'll just have AI do everything, right? Well, at the end of the day, what is that person going to end up with? A lot of AI generated slop. Their messages are going to be probably very muddled, not very clear, and probably not very good, frankly. And yeah, they might have ads that can reach their audience effectively, but are not going to resonate. Or, there's all these different challenges that would come along with that. So I don't really see a scenario where a business can just have, exclusively use AI and like cut the human element out entirely. I just don't see how that's going to work. I think it's those businesses that understand, again, how AI can be used to optimize, make business more efficient, take care of certain business functions more efficiently, certainly, like, the sales piece, how it can be used in marketing, so on and so forth. But, it's understanding that balance between what do people actually want from your brand? What do they actually want from your communications? What actually matters to them? And you can use AI as a tool over here to help augment it. I think you said that earlier. It's like that augmentation aspect. Right. So you can't forget the people. That's really, in my little rant here, the point that I'm trying to make. I just don't see a scenario where AI is like so great that it's just replacing. Because then what's the point? You're still selling to humans. AI doesn't have any money. So,
right.
AI is not the decision maker for the company. So yeah, like, unless somehow that all suddenly changes and we just don't have to work anymore, which I don't see that scenario happening either. I think, we're probably good. And again, those marketing leaders and business leaders who get that there needs to be that balance. It can't just have this one-dimensional sort of thinking. I think those will be the ones that are most successful. So
yeah, can I respond to that real quick? I think that to your point, like in theory, you could write all of your website copy through ChatGPT and build a new website, and you could have it create new graphics for your website. You could even have it design it, and then you could go and you could have it design all your social media posts and write all of your captions, and you could have it create a podcast script for you to read off. You could even have it generate that voice for you. But if you're not able to kind of see the overall matrix and understand how everything fits together or should fit together, you're just wasting your time. And I think that's the value that an agency or an agency owner especially, or a strategist brings to the table, is they can say, okay, here's the content that it spit out. What did we actually put in there? What kind of, because AI output is only good as AI input. And we can say, okay, what did it give us? And does this actually help us achieve our goals, which are X, Y, Z? And if it didn't, here's how we can optimize it, or here's how we can rerun it through there to get something better out on the other side. And I think that if you don't have that experience and that know-how and that foundational understanding of branding, marketing, whatever, you don't have any sort of sensor over whether or not what's coming out is any good. I've seen a lot of AI logos. All of them are bad, right? And like, I can say that I'm not even like a graphic designer. I've just been around the space enough to look at something and say, that's terrible. And if you don't have that eye or that knowledge, you're just going to keep putting out bad content and nobody's going to stop you. But what is going to happen is it's going to show up in the way people respond to your brand, and it's going to hurt you in the very short term and potentially in the long term, because you could potentially lose clients forever because people see just garbage coming out from your brand. And so I think that's what's really important, is if you're going to use AI for a lot of your business functions, understand what it is that you're asking it to do and understand how to evaluate what it spits out, because not everything it provides is going to be good.
No, it's such a great point. And it calls to mind something for me from a podcast that I absolutely love, which is the Mel Robbins podcast. And it's not about marketing. It's certainly not about AI, but she is the sort of creator of the let them theory, which is, you can't control what other people do, and you drive yourself crazy if you try, so just let them. So, there's going to be those business leaders out there, self-titled marketers who are like, yes, I do everything with AI. I did my logo with AI, my entire website, all my content, whatever. Let them. Okay, that's great. Go ahead, let them do it. But just understand, fundamentally at the end of the day, it's, again, like I had said earlier, people and what makes people unique, that is reflected in what makes your brand unique, your brand's voice, understanding how to message and position your brand. AI can certainly help with that as you're like asking questions or trying to understand, like, hey, how would this group potentially perceive this message versus this group, right? It can be good for that kind of research, but it can never do all of the work for you. Otherwise, it's just going to produce this very like unrefined thing, like what you're saying. So, you're going to hear people saying that they're doing everything with AI, and that's fine, but that doesn't mean that that's the reality across all of the marketing and communication spectrum, certainly not the branding spectrum. I think most people understand that, yes, it's a helpful tool, but it is not a replacement for, the things that are fundamentally human about marketing and the psychology behind marketing, right? So, one thing I'd love to ask you is, I've asked you a lot about, oh yeah, well, what do you think is going to happen in 2026 with AI, or, whatever. But what's one thing you would love for people to stop saying about AI and marketing? Like, what's one thing that you want, one misconception that you want to see go away next year?
I want people to be better educated about it. And I think we've kind of danced around a lot of the common misconceptions and mistakes people make, where they over rely on it. They don't check the work that it spits out. I think people are maybe a little too fearful of it. I think, there are a lot of thought pieces about how it's going to kill us all. And some of that's true. I mean, it is heavily pollutant, and it takes a lot of energy to create one graphic. And we could talk about the larger environmental impact. We're having a lot of those conversations in Pittsburgh right now because we're a big tech hub. We're a big energy hub, so that's leading to new data centers, which need a lot of power, and that's going to create more natural gas drilling. So the the widespread effects are rampant. And putting all of that aside for a moment, I think strategically, I think people would be more receptive to AI if they were just better educated about it. So when I first heard about ChatGPT, I had like a 3-day panic attack because I was talking to one of my partners and she was like, "Did you try this yet?" And I was like, "No, I haven't even seen it come up." And she was like, "Pat, I'm really worried you're going to go out of business." And so I went and tried it out and I was like, "Oh no. Ah, no." And it was like 3 days of just like being tormented because when I was in journalism, we had tools that were sort of like nascent, sort of like AI tools where you could like spit in a lot of information and it would spit out like the average of that content, but it wasn't like an AI that you could like have a conversation with and have all of these different inputs. But this was like, this is what they had been telling us when I was in journalism, was like, computers are coming and they're going to take your jobs. And they weren't using the word AI yet. They weren't using that phrase, but they were like, computers are coming. And so I was really worried about that for half of the week until I realized that the value that we bring is strategy. And whether or not that means our clients are using AI or we're using AI, I think what we bring and what people hire us for is the strategy that meets some sort of goal. And again, if you're unable to kind of see the matrix and see how everything fits together, you can't develop that strategy and you can't have those meaningful outcomes. And so whether or not AI ends up being good or bad for society, I think it can create in a vacuum a net positive for a company if you just understand how to use it properly. And for business owners, that doesn't mean that the business owner has to know how to use it inside and out, but probably a couple members of your team should. Anybody who's creating content, anybody who's creating copy or graphics or images should. And I also think that AI is also, if you inform it correctly, it can be a great sounding board. It can be a great tool. There's some really exciting stuff happening like in the sales world. So like Otter right now has a feature where it'll like hang out in your sales meetings and it'll help you catch the pain points that an individual is having, and then also help highlight things that you didn't catch that might be potential upsells. And so that's incredibly valuable. And that's just something that's riding along on your sales calls. So I think that the better we can educate ourselves on what's out there, how it fits into our workflow, and the quicker we can respond to it, the more all of us can benefit from it. So, and I think the short answer is, I just wish people would be better educated about it. And then, if you still hate it, that's cool. I get it. I hate it a little bit too. But that's my long-winded answer.
No, I love it. And, I would say as well, like obviously with data centers and everything, there are very valid concerns about like the energy usage, impact on local environments, all that, that's all super valid. It all matters. Those are concerns that I have myself. But something that helps me feel a little bit more optimistic, right? Again, it's just kind of understanding the nuances to your point, that as data center infrastructure accelerates, right? Like there's more and more data centers. Also, an entire industry of solutions for data centers is growing and popping up alongside of that. So it's like, okay, data centers are going to happen. Like you said, the computers are coming. It's like Paul Revere. All right, data centers are coming. The data centers are coming. So how do we make them energy efficient? How do we make them sustainable? Like, yes, technically we're adding data centers that weren't there before, but at the same time, like if this is the direction that, the world and the economy is going, right? Like, how do we just make that a better and more sustainable like economy overall? You know what I mean? So I think that sort of thing always makes me feel a little bit more optimistic that a lot of, like most issues in life, it's not really a black and white thing. There are a lot of great benefits to AI. I mean, I use it like every day. Now, at first, I would use it occasionally. I use it like every single day. I find it to be so helpful. Like I don't use it for my creation tasks, right? Like I love to create. I love to write. That's something that I genuinely enjoy, that brings me a lot of happiness and fulfillment in my work. But at the same time, it does help me be more effective. It does help me, like understand maybe some gaps in the content that I'm creating. Again, I like to use it from that messaging standpoint. Like, how do we think, one group might perceive this versus another? Like, is this tone too negative? Is it too, like, it's very helpful from an editorial perspective in that way. So I use it like every single day, like I said, and I think there's a lot of benefits. I do think there are a lot of challenges too, but I just have to have some trust and faith that we're going to be able to navigate that. And again, kind of strike that balance and find that compromise. So similar to what you're saying, right? Like there has to be that balance between using the technology, using the online tools for marketing, online channels for engagement and marketing, balancing that with the human face-to-face interaction and those real relationships that people need. And I think that that's true of data centers. I think it's true of AI, most things in life, right? Like there's always has to be a balance and happy medium. So that's kind of my, soapbox there that I have to get on. But so this has been such a great conversation. And I would love to know, are there any sort of closing thoughts that you have for the audience? Anything that you want people to really walk away with, on your end there?
I think the big takeaway from this conversation is just strategy. As business owners or agency owners, whoever's listening, what we really want is meaningful revenue outcomes. And that stems from strategy, whether that is starting with branding or your marketing or events, or whether that includes AI or not. I think just understanding what's in your toolkit, what's available to you, and how you can execute is the best pathway to success. All of that's easier said than done, but I think this is just a good opportunity for people to kind of revisit how they are executing, what they're executing, and how they're going about it.
Awesome. Thank you. And now, I'm going to close out with a hardball question for you, which is, with the time of year that it is right now, we're recording on Monday, November 24th. What is your favorite Christmas movie?
Oh my gosh. We've been watching a lot of Home Alone the last few years, which is classic. I really, really like Klaus or Claus. I think it's Klaus. That's a wonderful, just little like heartwarming story. If you haven't seen it, it's about what is the male? What do they call who's the guy that runs like the post office? The mail general or something like that. Post office general.
Like
I think it's the post office general. He's basically the post office general equivalent in like Scandinavia, and his son is a rambunctious youth, and he gets sent out to basically run the post office in this forgotten little town that has two fighting communities that have been feuding, and he basically gets them to start sending letters so he can meet his quota and he can leave. But he falls in love and he meets Santa Claus, and it's this wonderful little heartwarming story. I think that one was probably my favorite.
I love that. That sounds so fun. Yeah, I absolutely love Christmas movies. So I just had to know what your favorite is. And I'm going to come out with a controversial opinion here, but I cannot wait until after Thanksgiving to get my Christmas tree so I can start watching the Harry Potter movies. And I know people are like, it's very divided, right? Like some people are like, yes, Harry Potter is a Christmas movie. I'm in that camp. I don't know what it is. I love watching Harry Potter around Christmas time.
It feels like that. It's that magical sort of lighthearted. Well, it gets pretty serious, but that sort of like childish magic spirit of Christmas.
And I mean, there's always Christmas in the Harry Potter movies, but I think outside of that, like I also love the Home Alone movies. They're absolute classics. And then I love The Grinch too, like with Jim Carrey. And Muppet Christmas Carol. I have to confess.
Yeah, we watch that a lot.
Yes, have to watch that every single year. So super excited that we're getting to that time. And, I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season and all of our listeners too as well. Yeah, so before we sign off here, Pat, could you tell our listeners the best place to find you online?
Yeah, you can find me at poeticamarketing.com, or you can look up Patrick Schober on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And we'll put links in the show notes to your LinkedIn and your website. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and talking to us about AI and marketing. You know, it's one of those topics that people are just like, but also at the same time, guys, we have to talk about it. So thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who listens or watches the podcast. Please make sure you subscribe and rate our very humble podcast that we're trying to grow here. Pat, hope to have you back soon. And thank you again.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. It was great to see you again.